Welcome to episode 25 of From the Shed End podcast with myself, T Dot, and Theo. So first and foremost, how you doing, Theo?
I'm good, thanks. Slowly, I've recovered from the penalties last night and we got the win, so that's important and looking forward to the game Saturday now.
Yeah, it was a good game. It was a good game, and obviously the atmosphere looked amazing as well. But let's just get straight into it as always. Nerve-wracking end to the game, but before, let's go all the way back to the very start. So 10 changes were made by Thomas Tuchel, which was quite obviously a big dramatic change. But what was your thoughts seeing the lineup? We kind of spoke about it in the previous episode that there were going to be changes, but did you expect 10? 10's quite a lot.
I didn't expect 10, if I'm honest. If you think of it, that's every single player except for Kepa that didn't feature against Tottenham on Sunday. So it's a lot of changes. I expected many changes, but not as many as maybe seeing players like Malang Sarr feature. But yeah, then it does go to show that we have that depth in the squad to field two very strong starting 11s within a couple of days apart.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think it was it was always going to be difficult, I think, to get the team. You made that many changes in a squad that's used to playing together in a system that works, then having to almost dismantle that, bring it back together, and then put all these players together who technically are almost fringe players at the club. A lot of them, look at like Ross Barkley, or like you just mentioned, Malang Sarr, who sort of got a bit of game time. But it was good to see, Ruben Loftus-Cheek back in the fold. Ben Chilwell, who we spoke about previously on here as well, getting game time as well. But I just wanted to, let's talk about Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who I felt last night ran the show. It was almost, I think you put out a tweet, it was almost like the old Ruben, that we'd known before the injury. So just obviously being at the game, what was the impact that he had for Chelsea?
He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. My tweet was kind of, putting him in that kit that we wore in 2018 and 19, something along the lines of he's back, because he played as well as he did under the Sarri season and that Europa League campaign, dribbling past players, winning the ball back, doing a lot of defensive work, which maybe we didn't see so much during the previous seasons that we've watched Ruben Loftus-Cheek. So maybe that's something that Tuchel's worked on with him in pre-season and the trainings he's had with him. But there's nothing that says that if he plays like that week in, week out, that he shouldn't be starting, or at least giving Tuchel a bit of a good headache, I suppose, and saying I should be starting, I should be, whether it's that midfield role or just behind the striker. I think he's good enough to play either one.
Yeah, he was. Look, we know the talent that he's got. He's still relatively young in terms of where he's going to be playing in a midfield, and I think it's a massive injury to come back from. And we spoke about the fact that Tuchel's praised him a lot. He's mentioned comparisons as well of who he takes a liking to as well. So I think he's got a massive role to play for us at the club as well. But another player that I wanted to talk about, and there was mixed emotions about him during the game yesterday, was Callum Hudson-Odoi, who some people said that he potentially didn't have the best of games. And I do kind of understand where those kind of fans are coming from, who say that he is probably potentially a championship player, which is some of the things that were being batted around last night. But I do feel like he's a good player. I just think that the fight, he almost, when I speak about Adama Traore from Wolves, I almost think about Callum Hudson-Odoi, who has got everything that you would want in a right winger or left winger or a right back, but he just doesn't have that final ball, that final product at the end of it. And I just wanted to get your opinion. Is that kind of what you think, or do you think he is good enough to be at Chelsea?
I definitely feel like he's good enough to be in the Chelsea squad. Starting every week, maybe that's come a bit, it's a bit too early. I think he was only maybe 17 or maybe even 16, and there was still a lot of hype around him when he started his first FA Cup game for Chelsea under Conte. But I'd actually have to disagree. I thought he played quite well yesterday. I was sitting in the East Stand lower, the North section. So in the second half, I kind of saw him, run down the right wing, and he was giving Ashley Young quite a torrid time, if I'm honest. And he was unlucky enough to score a few times. He cut into the box. So I think the second choice Villa keeper made a good save at one point from him. But he was creating chances. He was making those runs. He was dribbling past players. Maybe his actual kind of decision making at times could be slightly better. But I still think we have to remember he's young. I think he was put a lot of pressure at an early age, and maybe that's kind of got into his head now. and he thinks maybe he's already reached his ceiling, which he hasn't, if I'm honest. So looking back, maybe in the summer, a move to Dortmund could have been great for him. But at the same time, when I said I moved to Dortmund, I mean alone. But at the same time, he's in the Chelsea squad now. He gives us that option at right wing back where we don't want to play Aspie or Reece James. And I think he's a brilliant squad player to have, whether he starts or whether he comes off the bench or whether he plays the cup games and the Champions League group stage games. But overall, a brilliant player to have.
Yeah, I think it'd be a shame to lose him. We've made that mistake many a times before where we've lost a great talent. They've gone on to do so much better. We could reel off 4 or 5 names now. Mohamed Salah, Kevin De Bruyne. There's so many more that we've had at the club. Let them go.
Lukaku first time round as well.
Exactly. We've had so many of them, and we end up regretting them. They go on leaps and bounds, and I think he's one of those players that just never really has cemented his time at the club in terms of regular football at Chelsea. And I think that time still can come for him. I think he's still got age on his side. Like I've said, he's got bags of talent. I just think he needs a run of games where potentially he fits into the squad somehow. I don't know if that's an unfortunate sort of injury that we might pick up, or a long suspension, and he builds up a bit of form and Tuchel sees something. But I do think he's got a massive part to play for us. I think he's such a good talent, and I do, like I've just mentioned, I do think that final sort of he gets into the right spaces, he can beat his man, which we've seen plenty of times before, but then it's just that sort of final product into the box, or that's the bit I think he needs to work on. But like you've mentioned, he's got age, he's young, he's got age on his side as well. But another player that I sort of was rolling the eyes a few times was Malang Sarr. And I don't know whether, obviously you was at the game, so you might have a totally separate opinion, but I just felt he doesn't look like a centre-back to me. And I don't know whether it's based on his height. He's not the tallest when you think about centre-backs, or it's just the fact we're talking about 10 players who potentially have never really played a competitive match together at all. So it could just be the fact that there was no sort of flow within that team, but he just didn't seem like he was on the pace of the game. He doesn't look like a centre-back to me. But what's your thoughts on Malang Sarr?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. His kind of build and his physique doesn't really, scream centre back when you compare that to, a Rudiger, a Zuma, even Thiago Silva, who, he looks a lot more comfortable on the ball. But I feel like, I'm not sure about his age, but I know that he was quite important in Porto's run to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. I think that move was very good for him for experience. We bought him in from Nice last summer for a reason, that we do see something in this player. I don't think he had a poor game yesterday. I don't think he necessarily had a very good game either, but he got the job done. I think he got a bit of a silly yellow card in the first half. And he's that type of player that maybe you're thinking, shoot, he's on a yellow card. Do you take him off at halftime? Do you maybe bring in Thiago Silva, who's on the bench, just to so we keep it at 11 players? Because he's maybe still getting adapting to the pace of English football, and Malang Sarr on a yellow card in the first half. I was getting a bit panicky. So, but no, I think he will adapt very quickly to Premier League football and English football. But I think he's another one of those players maybe that I think alongside Ross Barkley, that we wanted to loan out maybe, but we couldn't find him a club. I think there was talks of him going to a German club. I can't remember if it was Frankfurt or another club in Germany that wanted to try to sign him. But he's in the squad now, and this is what I like with Tuchel. And maybe a Barkley or a Sarr, they wouldn't have featured under any other manager because they weren't in their plans initially in the summer. But they're in the squad now, and Tuchel's making the most out of them. So fair play to him.
Yeah, no, it makes sense as well. I think, obviously if he's in the squad, I think I said it a few weeks ago, we've got to play him, and I think utilize him in these sort of games where, we can rest our main centre backs. We can rest them, and we've got the depth, which we've spoke about plenty of times on here as well. But I do feel Villa gave us a really good game first half. I think they had 3 shots on target, five shots, but 3 on target, 31% possession. I do feel that they had their chances, and I remember messaging you at half time around Cameron Archer, who I've watched in the previous round. I think he scored a hat-trick in the previous round, and I knew that he had that sort of talent in him to score. So we'll get on to the goal that they scored, but in terms of N'Golo Kante, who I think was quite an eyebrow raiser for all of us in terms of the fact that he started him, knowing that he came off at half time, it's not an injury. It was just the fact that Thomas Tuchel wanted him to get a few more minutes under his belt before Man City. It was actually quite a very good tactical stroke of genius from Tuchel, because you rested in Kante for 45 minutes, but you're also bringing on someone who can change the game in Mason Mount as well. So, what was your thoughts on Kante first of all? Because I think we didn't see him as captain, but also he had it was a quiet game for Kante, but still very, made a difference.
Yeah, I mean, when you see Kante starting, you know what you're getting. And I do recall a few balls that, he won and he intercepted. But I'm also glad that he came off at half time, and now, probably wrap him up in what do you call it, bubble wrap, and you keep him safe for Saturday. So I'm glad that he didn't play that second half, and he's got a recurring issue of injuries, so he's safe now for the City game. I'm glad to hear it wasn't an injury, and if I'm honest, it's another kind of Tuchel, stroke, a genius moment from Tuchel, because Mount, I felt, did change the game when he came on at half time. First half felt very lackluster from Chelsea. I can only recall maybe one chance where Ziyech tried to shoot it with his left foot, but otherwise it was a really tame performance in the first 45. Second half, Mount comes on, and it wasn't the same Mount that we saw in the first half of the Villa game or even against Zenit. I thought he was back to his best. He was superb, creating chances, driving the ball up the pitch, playing it well with the two other midfielders, Loftus-Cheek and I think it was Sal Niguez at the time.
Sal Niguez,
yeah, and so I think that was a great decision from Tuchel to bring Mount on, and I'm glad as well that Kante is now fit and ready to go on Saturday at 12:30.
Yeah, he's key. He's got to be key for Saturday, 100%. But it was good also to see a player who's got a lot of stick from me as well at times. But Timo Werner, to see him on the score sheet and to see what it actually meant for him again to score, it must have been a great feeling for him, because I think he's, not just myself, but I know there's a lot of people that have been wanting him to score, wanting him to do well in terms of goal scoring, and Peach of a pass from Reece James for the goal. But Timo Werner, this is what we need to see from him, surely. A few more goals. But it's not just his goals. I think even the fact that he stretches defenses. He does so much work off the ball. It goes unnoticed. And I think that's potentially why some people don't necessarily see what he's actually doing in the game. They just see that he's not scoring, or he might miss a few chances, but he's actually doing a lot off the ball, making a lot of good runs as well.
Yeah, I mean, just talking of runs off the ball, Champions League final, his run takes Zinchenko out of the game and then allows Havertz to cut in and be through on goal against Ederson. Then we know what happens afterwards. But he had a good game yesterday. And what I like is, when a lot of rival fans, kind of look at Chelsea fans and say, oh, what do you make of Timo Werner? He's had an awful first season or whatever. We kind of, when we say it as Chelsea fans, we're entitled to criticize him, but we criticize him more because we know what he's capable of, and we want him to be, back to his Bundesliga best. And if Chelsea fans at Stamford Bridge all 90 minutes, and even during the penalties, just chanting his name all throughout the game. So it's kind of the Stamford Bridge backing him, and so it's great to see. And I thought that header he scored was almost identical to the one that Lukaku scored against Zenit.
Yeah.
So he's got that ability now to score headers, aerial ability, and last season you just know that ball's probably hitting his shoulder or his arm and going for a goal kick or something like that. So I think now that maybe the fact that he's not a guaranteed starter in every game either probably means he's got more of a point to prove when he does get his 90 minutes, and he wants to take it well. So no, I'm glad he got on a score sheet, and I did predict he'd score first on the app, so got that one spot on as well.
I got my prediction completely wrong. I think I said 4-0. I think I was being very, very ambitious, but technically it was 4. I think we scored 4 penalties. I'm not sure. But moving on, I mean, obviously their goal, Cameron Archer, was a brilliant goal. I think 2 goalkeepers potentially wouldn't have saved that. It was that good of a goal. It was a really well taken goal. But I want to talk about Kepa, who we briefly touched on last episode. But I just feel like he's a goalkeeper very similar to what I said in the last episode, actually. Just, he's obviously matured a lot. He seems very more comfortable in goal now. My question to you is he good enough? Sorry, is he too good enough to be a number 2?
It's getting to that stage now where last season him being number 2 was completely justified. But this season, now that he's putting in these performances under Tuchel, keeping clean sheets, making game-winning saves, which he made a fantastic save from, I think it might have been Archer. I'm not too sure. And then I think Reece James cleared it off the line after. and he made a great save against Son on Sunday. He's almost. I think he is good enough to start as a first choice, which is a shame because as Chelsea fans, you love having him in the squad and knowing that he's capable of playing these type of games. With the FA Cup, first couple of rounds or even up. He played up to the final last season, so he's definitely good enough to be number one elsewhere, or even I'm starting to think, is he good enough to be number one at Chelsea? As much as Mendy is good, you start to think with the defense that we have now in front of us, and the way that Tuchel's created this strategy and team to kind of play defensive football and also but keep clean sheets. You're thinking, would all these Mendy clean sheets, would Kepa be keeping them too? It's quite I don't know. I do remember a few Premier League games last season where Kepa did play and he did keep clean sheets. I think the Brighton one, the 0-0, I think he started that. I think there were a few others where we did recall on him in the Tuchel.
Everton as well. I don't know if that was in the Cup or I'm sure he played against Everton.
Yeah. When we beat him 2-0 at Stamford Bridge, and I think it was the 1-0 where we lost to Arsenal, but that goal was kind of Jorginho's, wrongdoing. So no, I think he's definitely good enough to be first choice, whether it's at Chelsea or somewhere else. But as I said, it's almost sad for Chelsea fans because I think it will be somewhere else in the end, and that means him departing in the summer.
Yeah, and I think he will. I think if he keeps up this sort of form, last summer we probably would have said no clubs did come in for him, whether that was a loan or for a permanent move. But I think if he puts in these performances, even when he gets a chance at Chelsea, with the World Cup coming up next year as well, I can honestly see, a European club. I don't want to name any, but I know a European club, a big one, coming in for him, just to to pay the even if it's a loan. I can see people now potentially looking to pay his wages with the option to buy at the end of that season. So I think he's definitely in the right direction, but for all the wrong reasons as a Chelsea fan, because obviously like you just said, we want to keep him. He is a good goalkeeper and we've always said that, but I just think, like I mentioned on the last episode, the pressure's now the pressure was on him, but it's now off him. So I just feel like he's been able to mature as a person, develop his sort of skills as a goalkeeper, and he's done it really well. Like you mentioned yesterday, another clean sheet for him as well. I think he's broke the record now as well. In terms of the
no clean sheet yesterday, unfortunately, no clean sheet yesterday. But
but the penalty saves record he's got.
He's got seven saves in penalty shootouts, and the save he did against Nakamba yesterday made him overtake Petr Cech, who's on 6. And to think he's only been here for 4 seasons, I think he's been involved in maybe 4 penalty shootouts, 7 penalty saves. That's a very good, a very good number. So
massive. What's a really good record when you think about it.
Really good record.
The short time that he's had to do that as well. It's a good record. It'd be a shame to lose him, really would. But if he's good enough, we've got Bettinelli there as well. We might bring someone else in. You never know. But like you said as well, Mendy may not actually be the one that we need in goal. Could be Kepa. So I think if he carries on playing the way he does, he's got every right to fight for the position back as number one, first choice goalkeeper. But brilliant penalties. Let's talk about them quickly. None of them really worried me apart from Ross Barkley's, if I'm honest. I was very worried. I don't know why. I'm not sure.
For the Valencia home game in the Champions League, probably still having nightmares about that. Yeah,
potentially. But I was a bit worried about Ross Barkley's and a bit of Reece James, only because he did look a bit nervous. But well taken penalties from all the Chelsea lads, and obviously, like we mentioned, around Kepa. I don't know if you got to read about Timo Werner, and there was a lot of talk after the game again about why he didn't take one. I think he had a bit of cramp or a bit of stiffness in his leg, so he couldn't take one. But cruise through to the last 16. We were with the first ball drawn out of the cup yesterday. Harry Redknapp and Mika Richards were doing the draw. First name out comes is Chelsea with Southampton. So let's talk about that. Another home tie. We should beat them, I believe. I think we should be able to comfortably deal with Southampton.
Yeah, I'm glad it's another home game, which means I can make the short trip to Stamford Bridge across the road. So I'll be definitely going to that. And I do think when you look at some of the other teams involved in the draw, the likes of Liverpool, City, Tottenham, even West Ham, I suppose, I think we're quite lucky to have drawn Southampton at home. And I'm interested to see if would Broha be allowed to start that one? Seeing it's a league game, I'm not too sure, or a league cup game.
I
No,
don't think he would.
but Livramento, he's been an absolute talent for
Yeah,
Southampton. Since he signed, and a lot of United fans when Southampton played Chelsea earlier in the season, they messaged me being like, "Why did you let this guy go? He's absolutely fantastic at right back." So I think he'll probably start that game if he's not currently starting every week in the Prem. And but yeah, I definitely Southampton. I'll happily take that home draw. I do feel like they're slightly weakened from the summer after losing Danny Ings. So
yeah,
I think
yeah.
there's no reason why we shouldn't qualify from that game playing a similar team to the one we did yesterday.
And I feel like now that we're in the last 16, I know this is the bottom of the priority in terms of, you look at the Champions League, Premier League, FA Cup, and, Carabao Cup is always at the bottom, but it's still a trophy. And I know I said on the previous episode, if we were to go out to Villa, it's not the end of the world. But I think
Mm,
now that we're in the last 16, you do think about that Wembley sort of day out or, lifting the trophy. It does mean something still. It's still a
mm,
trophy. So I think we should still focus on the
100%.
fact that we can win it.
Yeah.
United have gone out, which to be honest, that does surprise me because I think that's their. This is no disrespect to United fans, but that's their realistic opportunity to get a trophy, which Solskjaer does need. They lost the Europa League last season, so I think for them that is their only opportunity to get a trophy. They're not going to win the Premier League. They're not going to win the Champions League if you're being honest. The FA Cup, we don't know, but I think I think for us, I think we just got to focus now on trying to get to the final.
Mm.
It's a trophy that you can get rid of. I think in Feb, is it the end of Feb the final? So
Yeah,
you know,
something like that. I think last year it was April because for COVID reasons, wanting
COVID.
fans back or something.
Yeah,
But no,
yeah,
100%. There's no reason why we shouldn't go all the way. And similarly to you, I walked to Stamford Bridge yesterday, just thinking, watch the second team. Whatever happens, happens. If we lose, it's not the end of the world. But as the game progressed, and especially during that penalty shootout, I had my hood up almost, really nervous, thinking I really want to win this now, and now that we're in the second round, I want to win this even more. But yeah, Wembley trip for the final is always nice, and I think VAR only comes into place in the semis, so there could be a bit of luck or not having any luck, the games in between. But yeah, I'll happily take a good cup run.
yeah, definitely. And we'll have to see. I think the next fixtures are playing week commencing the 23rd of October. So
Yeah.
it's going to be it's not too long to wait now. Obviously it's only a few weeks away, but let's take our attention away from the Carabao Cup. Big game on Saturday, Manchester City afternoon kickoff, which I hate early kickoffs because it can just ruin your weekend, but it is a good time to be playing Manchester City in my opinion. I think they're very weak. They don't seem the team that is very much. There's not a lot of togetherness that you can see. There's something that isn't right there, and I don't know whether that's just because of Pep's comments that he's coming out with at the moment. He's very sort of sporadic in what he's saying in his press conferences, but also just the fact that it's just something doesn't seem right there. So we know how they can play. We know that Pep likes to overthink things when it comes to playing Chelsea, which we've seen before. Obviously, Champions League final being one of those moments. But just in terms of the game, what are you expecting? Obviously, we'll have our full squad back. We've rested 10 of them, so Mendy should be back, hopefully fully fit for that game as well. Maybe Kepa starts. We don't know. But what's your sort of predictions and your expectations against Manchester City?
I kind of feel like similarly to the City tie end of season last year at the Etihad, and a bit like the Tottenham game we saw at the weekend, and like yesterday, I think it's going to be a game of both of two halves, with I think City scoring maybe an early goal and then Chelsea winning the second half. But it's just so hard to. You don't really know what you're getting with Manchester City at the moment. Like you said, I feel it's very difficult. Like that Southampton game on paper, they should be winning that easily, but Guardiola makes things harder for himself and ends up, drawing 0-0. And they were unlucky not to even lose that game. They were lucky not to lose it. So it's going to be a tricky game. You just look at the quality of the City squad, and that kind of makes you think it's going to be a lot more even than it should be. Then you look at some of the injuries and Tuchel's record against Guardiola, and you start to think this could plan in favour to Chelsea. So I think actually we are going to win it. I'm already doing my predictions, but I think we are going to win it. Like I said, City will score. I think just based on the quality they have in their squad. but I think Chelsea will score two in the second half. So I think 2-1 to Chelsea. But I'm expecting a very kind of almost a very unpredictable game in a way. And kind of you have phases of play from Chelsea where you're thinking like, are we actually playing Manchester City simply because how good we are? And that's what Tuchel, kind of installed in his team. It's a kind of like domination against big teams. And we saw that in the first half of the Champions League final, if I remember. Some
Yeah.
big chances we were having against Manchester City. I think a Werner chance quite early on. And you're thinking like, how are we creating these chances so easily against Manchester City? So, I think it will be a very even game, but also an unpredictable game.
Yeah, it's going to be, for me, it's going to be very interesting because I think the list that you sent me, I think it was yesterday or the day before, the list of injuries that Man City have got at the moment, if that is still relatively correct, I see that we can easily take 3 points off them. I like Nathan Ake as a centre back, but I just don't think he's going to be able to cope with the likes of Lukaku or a Timo Werner or whoever it is. Kai Havertz, Mason Mount. They're going to be. Tuchel likes that sort of high intensity, the pressure. I just don't know if they'll be able to cope with that, in terms of how we're going to be setting up. I suppose one thing we do have to remember, and again, it's probably one of the best times to play them, is City do start the season very slow in terms of, they don't necessarily win all their games. It's normally this sort of after Christmas, you'll see them go on like a 20-game run or something, 18-game run and win every single game. So this is probably the best time to play them, in my opinion, because I feel like, as I mentioned, there's something that just doesn't feel right about City. Wherever the fact that they've kind of lost a big figure in Sergio Aguero, who, although he was injured for relatively most of last season, was still a big character to have around the team as well. I do feel like we've got the upper hand on the fact that we do have an out and out number 9, which is very crucial, I feel like, in these kind of games. You mentioned around the chances that we created in the first half in the Champions League. If we had Lukaku up front, that in that game, you can only imagine how many of those chances probably would have been put away in the final. So for me, it's going to be interesting. I'm going to be very diplomatic and say that I probably wouldn't play Mendy based on the fact that Kepa is actually in very good form at the moment, and it'd be very unfair for him to lose his spot after the game at Tottenham and the Villa game as well. He hasn't put a foot wrong, so to drop him potentially, this could be the best time for Kepa to play against Man City as well. So I'm going to ask you a question around sort of left back side, left wing back. Obviously, we got to see Ben Chilwell last night against Aston Villa, but is this a game where you'd more likely trust Alonso because he can actually deliver the ball, into the box a bit more? He likes to get forward a lot more as well. Is this kind of the game that you would potentially put Alonso back in the lineup?
I think Alonso definitely stays in the lineup. There's no reason why we shouldn't drop him based on, the games he's played this season. I think in every single one of them, he's looked like he's defended well. He's created chances, but also he's looked like the Alonso we saw in the Conte, who's also able to provide goals. Unlucky not to score against Spurs. He loves a goal against Spurs, and I think he had 2 decent chances against Lois. But, when you've got a player a bit like Kepa, you mentioned, who's on form, why should you drop him a bit? Why? Same with Alonso. He's playing amazingly. And I still see Chelsea fans on Twitter being like, when is Tuchel going to drop Alonso? When's Alonso going to be benched? And in my head, I'm thinking like, this is starting to get to the stage now where this guy's a scapegoat. He plays almost an 8 out of 10 game and you still want him dropped. Like, this is foolish. So I think he will start. And against Tottenham, we were seeing it. He was almost like the second striker alongside Lukaku at times. So that's what you want against City. You don't want to just rely on your attacking players to score goals, but also your more defensive players or your fullbacks. So I think the reason he was rested against Villa means that he will be starting on Saturday. And I think I love Chilwell, don't get me wrong, but you're starting to think now, when's Chilwell actually going to have that chance to break back into the team if Alonso's playing as well? So it's a pleasant dilemma to have at the same time, 2 very good left backs. But at the same time, maybe you start to think like which one's younger, which one's older. Maybe you should try to prioritize the one that's younger as well. But as I said, if you're basing it on form, Alonso has to start.
Yeah, and I agree. I thought I'd ask the question, but yeah, I think he's in form. He hasn't, again, very much like Kepa, he hasn't put a foot wrong when he's been asked to play. So why change what isn't broken? But one player that we haven't mentioned, and again, I was very impressed the first half with him, was Saul Niguez, who I thought had a very sort of good game, but he kind of peaked out the game in parts. But my question, I suppose, is, what point are we going to try and blend him into the Premier League? Because he just seems like the two get, well, obviously we didn't get to see the first game, he got subbed off, but in terms of last night as well, I don't know. I don't know if he's the right fit for us at Chelsea. I don't know. He's got so many
It's
midfielders ahead of him as well.
it's
What's your
still
thoughts
early.
on him?
It's still early. I do agree with you. I feel like what I've seen from him this so far, I'm almost thinking like, could we have just waited to have Gilmore back, or just maybe focused on putting Loftus-Cheek in that position, or even a Barkley? But at the same time, we've only seen him for just over 90 minutes of football.
Yeah,
So it's a bit harsh to base him on that. And like I said with Malang Sarr, it's going to take him some time to adapt to English football. And I think the transition from La Liga to the Premier League is never easy, never easy. So I'm confident he's a good player. I just you start to think now, when will Chelsea fans start to get impatient with expectations with him? So hopefully come the October month, when we have some easier games against no disrespect to them, but like bottom half Premier League teams, then maybe you're thinking these are the type of games you want him to kind of showcase his ability against and maybe get some game time. But I agree. I kind of do want to see a bit more of him, more tenacity and a bit more creativity on the ball from him.
yeah, and we did see spells of that against Villa. He definitely had a better game, last night than he did in the previous. But I just feel like there's something that you're probably 100% right in terms of it's just got to give him that time to gel with the team and almost get used to playing in the Premier League as well. So that doesn't happen overnight. So it's going to be interesting, because I don't know if he carries on playing like that, if we're going to really get that sort of permanent move on the go. I don't think we need to. I think we've got Billy Gilmore there. You just mentioned Ruben Loftus-Cheek as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how his season unfolds with us as well. Hopefully it goes well. I think he's a very good player. He's very talented. Admittedly, I haven't watched a lot of him when he was at Atletico Madrid, but I just know that from what I have watched of him, he's a good player. So it's going to be interesting. But going back to Saturday, predictions, I'm going to let you go first.
I kind of said mine earlier, but I'll stick with what I said. Stick with what I put on the app today. 2-1 Chelsea, I think.
2-1 Chelsea.
Yeah.
2-1 Chelsea. I'm gonna go 2-1 Chelsea. Actually, I'm gonna copy you, and I do think even if it's Mendy or Kepa, I think City have got goals in them. We know that they don't need a number 9 to score goals, so I do think they'll score. I think it's going to be. I'm going to say Lukaku 2 goals. I think he'll carry on his goal streak, and he's even last night when he came on, he was just looking for the ball. He just wants the ball all the time. He wants it played to his feet, or he's pointed to where he wants it. So if he plays how he did, the last couple of games for us, I can see Lukaku definitely scoring. And like I said, I don't think that defense is going to be able to cope with him. I really, especially if it's Nathan Ake as well.
Yeah,
I like him. He's ex-Chelsea, so I've got to like him. But in terms of how he's developed, it hasn't gone the best. He didn't have a good time at Bournemouth. He hasn't really had the right time at City as well. But we'll have to see. But 2-1.
I do agree with that about Nathan Ake, and I saw quite a surprising stat that Donny van de Beek's played more minutes of Premier League football than Nathan Ake since their moves to their clubs last season. I think I saw some really horrible news that his father passed away, I think a week ago as well.
Yeah, he did.
So maybe his head's not right at the moment in terms of playing football. So it won't be an easy game for him if he does play on Saturday. So
and that's a massive dilemma, dilemma for him and for City as well. Okay, sorry.
No, but just last thing on City, they don't have a number 9. They can still score goals, but I think the fact that they have a number 9 will cost them the league, I think, on the long term.
And it'd be surprising if they get a number 9 and during January. I mean, I can't see many number 9s moving, and not many clubs want to sell their striker, midway through a season. So it'll be interesting. But like you said, they don't need to. They've got Jack Grealish, they've got Riyad Mahrez, they've got Ferran Torres, they've got Kevin De Bruyne, who I think is injured, at the moment. So they've got Gundogan. I feel like I'm missing someone. Phil Foden, who I think might be injured as well. But
Bernardo Silva. It's
Bernardo Silva. they've got people who get goals. Although I did read a good stat today about Chelsea. I think Timo Werner was the 12th player this season to score for us. I think that might be right. So I mean, we've got goals in us as well. It's not just Lukaku that's scoring the goals. We've got our defenders scored the goals against Tottenham and Kante as well. So it's not just Lukaku. So I think it's going to be interesting. I'm going to go 2-1 like you, and yeah, Lukaku to get 2.
Lukaku and Christensen for me. I'm going to say that Christensen. Yeah,
a bullet header from a corner, or maybe just a rocket from outside the box. Actually, like in Euros.
We've seen all our defenders score this season except him, so I think his goal's due now.
His time's coming. Yeah, but we can review the game next week. Hopefully it doesn't ruin my weekend. I hate early kickoffs. It's the worst thing ever because if we lose, it's just, you've got to watch football, painfully watch football for the rest of the weekend. So fingers crossed we win. Both going 2-1. Hopefully we're here next week and we can be not even right. I don't really care if it's 3-1. As long as we win, we get 3 points. I'm happy. So, let's hope we can stick to the top of the league because I think it's going to be tough. Liverpool are going to be I think Liverpool's going to be our closest rivals this season. When you look at it, I know City are a City, but United will drop off. I think. Yeah, it's going to be tough for Liverpool. Obviously, we mentioned, they're going to lose a lot of players. Say a lot, but 3 or 4 players, I think, in the African Cup of Nations. But Mane and Salah being key ones, but I still think they'll be okay. I think they'll be okay. So we've got to beat City. So for me, this is our real big test, our first test of the season. I know Liverpool's a big game, but this is our first real test of the season. And this is where our season technically starts now. So we've had our sort of dress rehearsal. This is the real stuff now.
Agree. I have to agree, yeah. It's going to be, I feel like when you look at the quality of the opposition we played, despite there being some big Premier League teams in there, they don't really come close to City. So I think it'll be the hardest game of the season on Saturday. Probably definitely the hardest Premier League fixture at least as well.
Yeah, let's hope for 3 points as always. But yeah, as always as well, before we wrap up, you can follow us on Twitter @FromTheShedEnd and on Instagram as well @FromTheShedEnd with underscore between each of the words. We're also on YouTube, so give us a like and a subscribe. Follow us on there as well. Comments as well. Interact with us on there. And Theo, if you just want to tell the listeners where they can find you as well.
Yep, so you can follow me on Twitter @SeskyTime, so Sesky spelled the Cesc Fabregas way. A lot of matchday content, pictures, and also just some Chelsea news and everything Chelsea related. So drop me a follow on there.
And you've also got your Champions League journal that you do as well.
Yeah.
You don't mention on here, but you're going to have to start mentioning.
I'll try to, yeah.
Very, very good. So if you haven't read any of those, I'm sure you can direct everyone to where they are and they can read them as well. So they're really good, really insightful in terms of the Champions League for Chelsea as well. So some good stuff happening there. But this has been episode 25 of From the Shed End podcast. Until next week, when we beat Man City, we will be back